Hello, I'm Philip Stoten. I'm at Apex 2019 on the SCOOPstudio, and I'm joined by three gentlemen to discuss the topic of data being the currency for the smart factory. We have Joel from Koh Young, Miles from Kick, and Bill from Creative Electron. Guys, thanks for joining me. What I think is interesting, and we're talking a lot upstairs about connected factory exchange and all those kind of things, really the important data they're collecting to me is kind of inspection and process data, and you're kind of three specialists in that. And I wanted to kind of explore the idea that firstly that data has to be really good to be really valuable, but secondly it has to be kind of fused together from all your different areas to provide this kind of holistic value. Perhaps I can start with you, Joel. You're kind of in, I guess, two spaces, SPI and AOI, but there are a whole bunch of other spaces where data is useful to you.
Yeah, it's key. It's really key to everything that we do and everything we're going to be able to do going forward. I like the topic here because you can make a case that it's not only the currency, but the first thing we have to do is make sure that currency is not counterfeit, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is back to the data source, how we're deriving it, getting it the right way, measurement-based, parametric, making sure we have the quantity, the statistical relevance to do with it what we need to do, and from there, then we can utilize that information.
Yeah.
We can utilize that data. So I think it really starts with that. But certainly, all of the decisions that are made, whether they be manual or automatic through some form of AI, is coming from that results data, that verified, again, parametric, proven quality data.
Yeah, and it's having quality data that you can rely on. Miles, I have interviewed some of your customers in the past, and I remember talking to Jason at Celine, and he was asked by a client for traceability data on oven profiles for a batch of boards, and he was quite pleased to be able to turn around and say, I can give you one per board. I've got a profile for every single board that went through in that batch. That's really, really valuable data, but it has to be contextualized and it has to be available to be used throughout the process.
Yeah, and I think that's when you move up to that level of the factory level, that's where it gets interesting. And when you talk about the currency or the exchange of the currency, you can add even more value. So you have down at the line level, you have information, and actually our inspection is of temperature, right? It's not looking at the product itself, but how it was processed in line. And then it's such a unique thing to be able to trade that information with inspection, with AOI, and say, okay, is there a relationship between what they're finding out and what we're finding out,
Yeah.
and the trends, and give that extra value to the customer.
Yeah.
Because just the machine itself isn't going to reach that level.
Yeah, it's interesting, that mix, because I think that's really important, and we've talked about it in the past, that mix of machine data and process data, and they can sometimes be two different things, and that kind of what you do in thermal profiling is to follow the board through and get that data. Bill, when I look at all this data, and I know you sometimes use the term data fusion, it's almost like there's so much data we don't know where it's going to be used. How do you start to fuse the data from these guys' equipment with the data that you're using to create value?
So when we start talking about data and data, being the currency of the smart factory, it's important to contextualize the data, right? Data out of context is noise, right? And there's no currency, there's no value there. As we move forward with the next generation of the SMT factory, the ability to understand and correlate and fuse these data modalities, right, from SPI to AOI to oven profile all the way to the XI, which we provide, is going to give us that next step, that next revolutionary step towards the levels of efficiency that our customers are looking for. Yeah. And that's only going to be achieved when we have these modalities working together, right? Yeah. So not only we have to, as equipment vendors and developers, not only to worry about the vertical development of our systems, but also the horizontal development of our systems.
Yeah, and it's that connectivity, and to use the currency analogy again, the the exchange of that currency is a lot of what's going on upstairs. You're all involved in that CFX initiative. Having that data normalized and available in a single language or in a single communication protocol is really important, I guess.
Well, it is, and again, we've gone to great lengths, as Koh Young and others as well, to make sure that we've done as much as we can possibly do with the data that we're getting, basically taking care of our own house, right? We've maximized and made as efficient as possible everything that we have full control of, right? So now the next step is how do we pass that? How do we receive and get ourselves to a point where not only can we compare and contrast and normalize the data from our tools, but also allow the customer to do the same thing with every system up and down the line, using our information in many cases, and again, passing what we need to, where we need to, and creating actionable events that affect the process.
Yeah, Miles, when you're looking at that process, and I always come back to this idea that each of you guys needs to have this really deep domain expertise, because if you don't get the really high quality data, you don't get the real value in the currency, and you can't do much with it. So that's essential. But you've got to understand this kind of big data fusion picture, this big picture. How do you manage that in terms of your internal R&D, and particularly for some of the smaller companies in the industry, being kind of an AI expert and a data processing expert, and maintaining that real kind of passion for what you do, which is thermal process? It's really important, but it's a challenge to do both.
Yeah, it is a challenge, but I think once the data is exposed, and like with CFX or making the data available and common so it's easily more transparent, it's easier to answer that question to that customer because they're not trying to interpret different things. So when you talk about the analogy of currency, you end up with a common currency so that then you see the value of each and then can combine that.
Yeah.
So, as long as you're collaborating, which is a really important part of the smart factory, you can't just be, well, we do what we do the best we can. That's not good enough anymore. So you definitely have to have the collaboration, and I think that's where the customer will see. If you have partners and collaboration, then they'll see the value, and then it's easy. You don't have to go into a theoretical explanation of artificial intelligence or data analytics. It becomes more a simple discussion.
Absolutely, and Bill, when you look at the situation where you're taking maybe AOI images, SPI images, you're taking thermal profile data, that can help you do a better job on the X-ray machine and maybe identify where you do need to and where you don't need to X-ray. But also you can add data into those, and it becomes part of a whole traceability picture.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting because what our customers are really looking for is information, right? And our jobs is to bridge that gap between data and information. And to do that, the more data you have from the different modalities, good quality data, of course, and if you know how to interpret that data, you can bring it to information, and information that our customers can actually turn into action. Because that's ultimately what they need, right? They need to know what's wrong on the line and how to fix it in the most fast and efficient way possible.
Yeah.
So CFX is one important step towards this future where this data analytics and whatever other layers we pile on top of it with artificial intelligence, machine learning, will become transparent to our customers, like Miles referring to, so that the line will be able to diagnose itself and express to the operator what might have gone wrong.
Yeah.
And who knows, eventually in the future we'll have self-healing lines, right?
Yeah.
Or they'll be able to fix itself before an operator has to intervene.
Yeah, Joel, when you're looking at the different positions you occupy on the line and the different information, you've done a lot in terms of closed loops. You're already in this situation where SPI is influencing the screen printer setup, and that's great. And you're even doing some auto repair inside dispensing inside
Correct,
your machine to kind of help that situation out. But I think what we're looking for is something even bigger. It's almost like you don't know where that AOI data or that SPI data is actually going to be useful elsewhere, and I think that's where we get some exciting opportunities.
Yeah, and it gets back to, we're doing what we're doing internally, but when we can really start sharing and utilizing this information up and down the line completely, that's where I think the sky's the limit, right? Mm-hmm. So, again, the sooner we can get to that protocol that allows that kind of information to be shared in a way that, again, you're absolutely right, Bill. I mean, we're here to help the customer. That's the ultimate goal here, right? And we're trying to make them more efficient. We're trying to put more time back in their day. Yeah. So they can use it to do other more productive things. Yeah. And again, use the automation, use the AI where it makes sense. Let the human element continue to do what it does best, while the systems take care of themselves. So we're very excited to see where it goes. Yeah, no doubt about that.
Miles, you mentioned that kind of collaboration. Openness is also important, isn't it? You've got to be maybe a little bit less selfish about your data, because even though it's proprietary out of your system, who knows where it can be valuable to the EMS company or to the manufacturer.
Yeah, and I think you look at if you look at the cellular, where each generation they go 3G, 4G, and I've had some people I've worked with in the past that are involved in those standards. You have very, very strong competitors when you talk about Apple and Samsung and all these people. And in order to open up a market, they have to cooperate. So I think we, in our industry, have to do the same type of thing. We have to have a certain level of trust and cooperation to get to that next level, and then it opens up more opportunities that you can show value with your product and new innovation. Yeah. So your innovation level is up higher now. Yeah. But everyone collectively, and then that's just another level of competition you have. So.
And Bill, it's the rising tide raising all boats, isn't it? Yeah, if you collaborate, everybody gets more out of it.
Exactly, and as the system at the end of the line, we can provide incredible insights for the SPI and AOI data, right? So I think if you look at the overall performance of the tests and algorithms we have today, the ability to see what the data upstream is looking at and how those algorithms are performing will be incredibly impactful on our own results, right? Yeah. So, and that's the whole data fusion concept, right? Yeah. It's the ability to look at the same thing from different angles and come up with something closer to truth.
Yeah, it's creating that big picture and figuring out what to do with it. And I think one of the next challenges is figuring out how we manage this huge amount of data and where we store that, but that's another story. Guys, thanks for chatting to me today. Absolutely a pleasure to talk to you, and enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.
Thank you.